So this morning is really special for us because this is the first time we've had a presenter come back after presenting the first time, and we like to call that the 1 million cups refill. Get it? It's kind of cute, huh? In November, Lori Waldrich presented her startup Top That Pizza, which you may have heard of. It's personalized pizza, kind of, well, I don't want to go too far into what it is because she'll tell me about that, and I don't want to use the analogies that she would want me to use. But since she presented, she has actually exited the company. So there's been a big change in her startup, and we wanted to have her back so we could learn about what happened, and really so that she could share what she's learned with us about that process. So please help me welcome Lori Waldrich. Bar is the biggest target that'll work.
How are y'all doing? Good. Yeah, I'm kind of honored to be able to be up here a second time. That's kind of cool. Really, what I'm going to talk about today is really what it's like, because I know a lot of you guys, how many of you guys have a startup that you're in right now? How many of you are trying to start a startup? And how many of you have started one and sold? Nobody. One. Okay. So I'm really going to talk about the full circle aspect of what I've done, and really in hopes of helping you guys reduce the amount of drama, because there will be drama in doing a startup, and I kind of want to share what I've learned over doing this, and I'm going to try and do it in 6 minutes. So, just a little bit about myself. I'm what you might call a serial entrepreneur. I worked for somebody first job out of college, and then decided that's not for me, I'm going to go do my own thing. And that was, I bought a business in 1997 that I still run, and that is Idea Studio, which is a marketing and branding firm, communication firm in Tulsa, and I'm still principal at that and always was. And some of the things that I've done on the side were in addition to. But just a little bit of what I've done over the past years. I'm a logo designer, that's kind of my passion. But also in being a serial entrepreneur, we started lots of little businesses. We still own some of them, we've sold some of them. Some of them were crazy, some of them worked, some of them didn't. But what I'm really going to talk about is Top That, because it's got the most recognition, and it was the biggest one that we started and the most risky. So a little bit about it. We started with a big idea, we thought about it for a long time, we developed it, we grew it, and then we sold it. And how many of you guys have ever been to Top That Pizza? Okay, 2/3. Okay, it was the very first create your own personal pizza place, kind of like a Subway but pizza. And it had never been done before. We were the first ones to do it in 2010. Basically, you walk down the line, you do your thing, they bake it in 2.5 minutes, and then you have a pizza. It was the first of its kind. At our peak, we were at 12 locations. We're now at 6. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And we sold it this year, just a few months ago. And so it was kind of a full circle deal. And I really wanted to talk about the things that I learned from this experience. And the very first thing that I can say is that the size of our big idea is relative. I mean, we thought about it for 5 or 6 years, and we thought, we need to do this. No one's done it. We need to do it. And lo and behold, we got our financing. We opened up our pizza place, thinking, the second those doors open, there's going to be lines out the door, because this is the best idea that ever since sliced bread. And of course, we opened the doors, and we're all like looking at our watches. It was like, where's the people? Where's the line? We've been in the newspaper and everything. And so the reality check for us was that and what I can pass along to you guys is you might have a killer idea, but be ready that it's not going to, or may not, translate to every single person instantly. It may take more time than you think it should. Secondly, the second one, again, I'm going to use the reference of the second we opened the doors, because we kept it a secret all the way up until we opened it. We opened the doors, there were a lot of distractions. People came out of the woodwork going, hey, where's the wings? Where's the TVs? Why don't you have beer? How come your stores aren't bigger? And a lot of the distractions we had, we were able to stick to what our gut was. But then there were sometimes, like, for instance, we were convinced by a real estate agent in another state, you have to have a store that's twice the size, because that's what's going to bring people in. Of course, we did that. It didn't work, and as you can see, we're not 12 units anymore, so we had some failures in business. But we kind of knew all along, but that wasn't our model, but we did it because somebody who, quote unquote, knew more than us told us that it was a good idea. So a little learning there. Not everybody shares your level of passion, and really one of the things we learned about that is we went in with some partners who, we were the ones with the idea, so we were the ones wearing the logo shirts everywhere. We want everyone to know about this. And our partners even admittedly, who we were very good friends with even to this day, that we sold, said, well, I just don't have the passion you do. I'll put the money behind it, but I don't have that passion. And when it came time to ask for more money, the passion wasn't there. And it was really hard for us to get what we needed to move forward. So be used to that just because you came up with a great idea does not mean everybody in the organization or even outside of it has that same level, and that's okay. You just have to be ready. Now this is the most interesting one. Success is a moving target. And I kind of was trying to figure out how to put this on paper, or on a slideshow. But what is success? I mean, I've had people say, well, were you guys successful? And, my first thought was, well, no, because it didn't do what we wanted it to do, so we sold. But just yesterday, I sat down with a friend of mine and had breakfast with him, and I said, how's your business doing? Are you successful? He said, well, I was really successful at the very, very beginning. I made millions of dollars, but my family fell apart. So success, from what I've learned, is not financial necessarily. I would say that we are successful because we created a category that didn't exist, and now there's a bunch of players in that category. And then finally, establishing your end game. You kind of know what you're going to do going in, but what do you do going out? We did a really good job of sitting down with our partners at the very beginning and saying, okay, because we're friends with them, let's not leave this thing with a bad taste in our mouths. Let's know that we're going to sell it someday. And that's why I say full circle. We did what we expected to do, was to create it, grow it, and sell it. And it all worked out for us. But if it hadn't been on the same page with our partners, we might have run into some issues. So the biggest thing out of this is no matter what you do in your businesses, as we've talked about in lots of these meetings, is you learn. And obviously, entrepreneurs don't quit. They just do it again. So in our case, that's where we are. And I welcome any questions.
All right. Well, obviously now's a chance we have to ask questions and learn a little bit from Lori about her experience. So I'm going to go here.
I think I heard someone say that you guys went international with it. Can you talk a little bit about that and that experience?
Sure. Oddly enough, I think it was the second year we were open, we had an interested party in Abu Dhabi. And he opened up in a shopping mall. I wish I had photos with me. I didn't think of bringing them. But in the middle of the food court, a shopping mall. And it is killing it there because shopping malls are really all there is to do because it's so hot outside. So, that's what you do when you're over there. And that franchisee is building a second unit. He's in the middle of building it now. So it was very successful overseas.
I traveled quite a bit overseas, and one of the things that's always lacking is as a missionary traveling around, you never get pizza, American style. Why don't you get bread and cheese and on pizza, and you dip it in ketchup? It's really weird. So there might be, I don't know about the partners or if you have any kind of relationship there, but there's a huge market overseas, especially like in Asia, Africa.
Well, this particular franchisee has an agreement to do all the countries in the GCC, which is the Gulf Cooperative. I think that includes Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and UAE and all those kind of more peaceful countries. So it may happen there first before it happens elsewhere.
So I have kind of a two-part question, and I might skip ahead here, but great presentation. Are you teaching this to other people? Is consulting something that you're offering now out of the experience that you got from this?
I would love to, and I would welcome anybody who wants to sit down for a cup of coffee. My core business is branding and marketing, but having this insight and being able to help a startup avoid some of the things that I've seen in my years of having my own businesses, I think would be helpful. But I'm always available if you just want to ask me questions. I'm happy to share.
And then the second part to that question may kind of skip ahead. I don't know if you're going to get to that, but so what's next? Because you said that you always go again. Like, is there already something else on the horizon, something else that you're working on? And if you could tell us about that, cool. If not, if it's super secret, I get it.
I'm not telling you. but I will say that I have lists of ideas. it took me about 5 or 6 years to develop top that, and one of the things I've learned is there's no hurry. The stars need to be aligned, and the economy needs to be where it needs to be, and my frame of mind needs to be where I need. But right now, I'm growing my marketing business because that's my first passion. That is my first love, is marketing and branding startups. So until everything aligns for my other ideas, there'll probably be ideas until then.
A quick question then. When you exited, did you retain any shares in Top That Pizza?
I can't go into detail about the arrangement, but what I will say is that we had the opportunity to make some revenue at some point on it, so there was a connection.
Great to see you coming back and telling us an update. One of the things I've always reflected on is it seems like Tulsa, Oklahoma is kind of the franchisee business capital of the world. Between Sonic, Just Between Friends, Seeking Sitters, obviously Ken Selby, all of his success. I've often thought, is there an opportunity to build a greater community in Oklahoma around these franchise-based business models? And did you find there was a decent amount of resources available? Were there attorneys that were experts in this? Were there accountants that were expert in this? And what would you recommend we do to actually build more opportunity around franchise business models?
Honestly, my involvement was not on that end of the business, but what I can say is that we used a nationally known franchise attorney that was not based in Tulsa. However, we saw a lot of people here in town that were experienced in franchising. We had a good network, a lot of people to bounce ideas off, so I think there's always room for improvement, even if there was an association of some sort. I'm not aware of one that specifically targets franchisees, but that would probably be a great thing, since there's a lot of people.
Dustin has a question here in the back.
I just wanted to make Baron walk all the way back here. Lori, I'm sure there's probably more than one thing, but if there's one thing that you look back on and say, I wish I would have known this. I mean, you covered that a little bit in your lessons there, but is there one thing that you want to say, I want to make sure everyone here hears this one thing? What would that be?
Okay, that's easy. Funding. Make sure that, to start a restaurant chain like we wanted to do, we were grossly underfunded. And that's one of the reasons we've gotten out of it, because we reached the limit to what we could do. Because we were first, and I'll just kind of elaborate a little bit here, the guy that sold us our ovens, we were the first people to buy their ovens because these were the fastest pizza ovens at work. He called me one day and said, watch out. He said, there are people in your store from the big chains. They're diving through your dumpsters. They're looking at what you're doing. And within 6 months, a publicly traded company had copied us. And they put $4 million behind it. And we were in the thousands. We were not in the millions. If we'd have been in the millions, I think it could have been a different deal. And just, we spent a lot of money up front on the things that we thought were the correct things. But when you create a new category, you're trailblazing and you're the one testing the waters and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, because it's never been done before. So I would say, in looking back on it, that's probably the biggest learning experience, is we should have probably had deeper funding than we did.
How much are franchises for that? And did you guys ever look at selling to one of those other big guys, like actually presenting with the guys that own, is it Taco Bell and Pizza Hut and all those guys?
Typical franchise, now, again, I'm not selling franchises here, but you could go online and typically a general franchise cost is $25,000 for a fee. That's standard. It's just about every franchise out there. And then you've got to have the money to build your store. And then even for a franchisee, you've got to be well funded, because sometimes when you open, depending on where your real estate is, it might not be a slam dunk. Sometimes it is. You have to be ready for either one. So you can probably find that out online. There's Q&As. Oh, your other question. I'm sorry. Early on we really didn't consider selling because, again, when you're a startup and it's your idea, it's kind of your baby. You're not selling to those people. I'm just going to have to do it, And we actually were approached early on, and we could have, but we didn't. So And I don't regret that, because then I wouldn't be standing here telling you guys what all I learned if that had happened. So, hope that answers your question.
Could you talk, like you were just mentioned, when you have a startup, it's kind of your baby, and I'm sure there were some internal battles about finding what you wanted to do. Could you talk about that process of going through the decision to exit and what factors you considered?
Okay. Well, as I said before, we reached the limits of our ability to fund it the way it needed to be funded. Probably the best way to describe it is that the opportunity presented itself at exactly the right time. It was the right people. It was the right arrangement, and it happened very quickly, and all the parties involved, including us and the buyer, were very pleased with what happened. So I don't look back on it and go, geez, I got out of it because it just didn't work. It just was the right time for us to exit, because the people that are taking over now have the ability to take it where we couldn't. And I think getting over that pride of, selling off your baby to someone. I was asked that, well, is that just devastating to you to sell? I was like, no, I mean, baby needs shoes. Lots and lots of pairs of shoes, and we've reached that point where we, as a group, we're not the right group to continue to make it happen.
Question here in the back.
Just curious, why several companies, people, they take serial entrepreneur sort of as a badge of honor. Why again and again and again and again? Why not one idea consistently through? And then what do you do at the head of the ship when you jump over and now you're focused on this? What do you do with the stuff you left behind? How does that get managed?
Okay, I think the best way to answer that.
What is it in the start, and why instead of just taking one thing and growing? What is it about starting up?
Well, if many of you guys who are entrepreneurs know, you're a diamond rule. If you're a true entrepreneur, you just don't stop. There's a great proverb where you fall 7 times, you get up, And I think that it's that drive that doesn't go away, because I could look back on that and go, okay, if I had to do it all over again, I would do this differently, and this differently, and this differently, and this differently. Maybe I'll just do it again someday and do it in the way that it could have been done. Maybe I won't get into my, I'll stick to my gut on this and that and the other, because I saw what happened. Now, there's a group that started another Create Your Own Pizza concept. They interviewed the guy, and it's his 3rd attempt, and now he's killing it. And he said, well, my first 2, I learned a lot. So I think that's what goes into it. You don't give up if you're a true entrepreneur versus saying, well, I tried entrepreneurialism, I'm going to go work for someone now because it just didn't work. Well, the jury's still out, because it may work 20 years from now. The Top Hat Pizza might grow to 200 units, might grow to 300, 500 units. It may grow in the Middle East. I don't know. So I can't really chalk it up as, well, that didn't work, because it may work later.
Well, what do you do with it when you had a marketing firm that was working, and then there's a pizza? What do you do with the marketing firm?
The marketing firm suffered, because the economy was such where nobody was buying marketing, so we kind of had to diversify a little bit. However, it did get neglected, and the funny thing that happened, I was just telling Brad this before the meeting, was, I'm a restaurant marketer. I've done tons of restaurant marketing, and I had clients that continued to do business with me regardless of me owning, because I didn't work in the pizza. I wasn't standing there making pizzas. I was doing the marketing for them like I would any other client, but the perception was, oh, she's too busy. I can't hire her for this big project because she's over here trying to get this thing started. And so there was a confusion along the way for my clients, but ever since I sold off, I reapproached him, and one of my clients said to me, he was a restaurant guy in Houston, he's got 60 units, company owned, and he said, well, that's interesting, now that you sold, I've had this huge project sitting on the sidelines that I would love to give to you, but I didn't because you were so busy over here, even though I really wasn't that busy. The perception was, oh, she can't do 2 things at once. And truthfully speaking, it was hard to do 2 things at once. I did it, but you do neglect one business to work on another, especially if you let it take priority. It's very slippery.
Next question here in the back.
So at the end of the day, I'm kind of the big technology guy, and I've always been a little bit disappointed that the restaurant industry has not really embraced technology in many senses of the word. With the fully custom pizza model, I've often thought there's lots of restaurant opportunities for the system that knows what I like exactly based on either my cell phone number, or RFID, or anything like that. Did you guys ever explore, like, when I walk in, I order the Scott pizza and it knows the 28 ingredients I want? Or have you seen that model happening kind of in this fully custom restaurant model?
Have you guys been in a Quick Trip lately? Where you walk up to the kiosk and order your pizza and they make it for you? I think it's in its infancy, but what we found is, and I was kind of along the same lines of like, we could do so many technically cool things with this concept. But in being on the other side, you find out that, okay, the managers at the restaurant level aren't as technically savvy as we are. And to get them to figure out how to do QR codes and tie them into the point of sale, if things start getting complex, where the people operating the restaurants, they're not as technically savvy as the people who are creating the initiatives. And there have been a lot of stops and starts where, there's some fully integrated digital ordering kiosk and it backfires because the people, the customers in line don't know how to use it, or it's too hard, or it costs too much to implement it. And as you guys may know, may or may not know, margins in restaurant business are really thin. So to do a big initiative that really doesn't have that demand, now if there were pent-up demand of customers saying, man, I wish I could do it this way or that way, versus assuming that this would be a great idea. Again, this is one of those where you have a big idea and you put it out in public and then the customers are like, no, I just want to tell you what I want. I don't want that over here. I just want to tell you to your face. It's that kind of stuff you got to be real careful of because it may or may not fly depending on who your customer is.
Next question here in the back.
At the risk of having to be a leading question, I'm curious if you've gone now to your marketing clients and said, hey, I've had this experience. I think that me doing this myself will be able to help me grow your business with my marketing skills.
Yeah. Especially in, kind of a sideline. I have a little logo business that is an offshoot that I specialize in startup logos. And I'll just sit down, and I've done quite a few for some people in this group even. And just they've been able to ask me questions about that, the insight that I have. But my main client I was telling you about in Houston sat me down and he's telling me, I have this big project. And he says, so is this all part of your plan? To come back to me and say, okay, now I know what you're talking about, Mr. Restaurant Operator, because now I've been an operator. And I kind of thought about that and I thought, well, I guess it could be interpreted that way, but no, not really. So it's been very positive.
Next question back over here.
First, I just want to say this was incredibly inspirational, and I appreciate you talking with us. I wonder if you could speak to anything as far as, you mentioned as entrepreneurs, we fall down and we have to keep getting back up and we have this drive. But what have you done specifically that you've learned that helps you remain positive and continue to get back up with the energy that you need to have to keep going and kind of also balance that success in your family and work life?
Okay, yeah. I think the biggest, there's so many, I could talk for hours about this stuff, but really trying to temper any disappointment that you have. Things are probably not going to work the way you expect or think they are. And I think the way that you respond to that, you can either get angry about it or frustrated or throw your hands up in the air and say, to heck with this, I'm done. Or you can look at it and go, okay, I just learned a tremendous amount from this over here that I can apply to that over there. But I think just reconciling the fact that you have, and like I said before, success, you have to be willing to tweak your idea of success. If you set a goal for yourself and you didn't make that goal to, put your tail between your legs and say, geez, I'm a failure and it just didn't work out, versus, honestly, through all of this, our family's gotten a lot closer together. We've learned, in dragging our kids, we have 7 and 9-year-old boys, and we were dragging them from store opening to store opening over the summer, and they didn't enjoy that, and it wasn't a great situation for them. And we're not doing that right now. I mean, again, the reason for selling was right for us, it was right for our buyer, and one of the big parts of it was we didn't really want to sacrifice our family and our, mental health to try and make something work out here when it doesn't balance out as much as it could. So that's one thing, and then just being flexible and understanding that you may run away as a successful entrepreneur. You may, but you may not. And how you deal with it is telling us how to move forward.
Awesome, Lori. Very inspiring, I agree. If you could let us know what we, the community, can do to help you in your next thing.
I'm going to reverse the question. I'm going to say, what could I do for any of you guys out there to help you? Just sit me down and ask me 1,000 questions. I'm happy to help you.
I think you should just keep doing what you're doing, sharing this. I just tweeted out that this is exactly what, there's been a lot of talk about what the entrepreneurial community in Tulsa needs, and I think it's this. It's this, okay, I've been through it, and it had this outcome or whatever, and sharing that back, that this is what the real world is. This is what it's like. So I think it's awesome.
Okay, rephrase that answer to my question. If anybody knows someone who needs a speaker to talk about this, let me know.
Yeah, it is. Let's give Lori a hand.